So welcome to the Secure Dynamics TechCast. With me, I have two former guests. I have Marnie Wilking, who is the Global Head of Technology and Security Risk Management at Wayfair. Welcome, Marnie.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And I have Lamont Orange, a multiple past-time guest, who is the CISO at Netskope. Welcome back, Lamont.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And so today's topic is business logic attacks. And I'm going to start off with something that I first heard of many, many years ago and still so fresh in my mind. So apparently there was this big name concert and the tickets were going to go sale at 10 a.m. And there's this bot that actually hit at 10 and each endpoint of the bot actually checked out one ticket, didn't actually buy. So by 10:01, the entire inventory had gone, and so you and me, as fans of this musician, would go in there at 10:01, 10:02, and want to buy tickets. Nothing available. What do? Go to Google. They're running an AdWord over there, markup 3x, and you hit buy. They go and check out one ticket, sell it to your 3x markup. By 10:15, everything was gone. So for me, this just sticks out in my mind. And today's topic, I'm going to start with you, Marnie. It is. How does a CISO in today's universe deal with given the various tenets that a business logic attack would have, from supply chain to customers to partners, where do you even begin? And is this even a problem that can be mitigated, or does it usually need to be curtailed right after detection?
So I do think it can be mitigated. I think first and foremost, it's really important for all CISOs in the entire security team to really understand the business. And we've talked about this before. I make sure that I have conversations with my business partners regularly about what they're doing, what their challenges are. But it's really, really important to understand the underlying framework of what you're doing and why your business is there. Because then you can actually start, when you're having those conversations, you can start adding some threat analysis conversations, right? When you're talking to maybe the website engineering team, you can start talking about, so, what could possibly go wrong here? And let's talk through the attack framework, not just from a security standpoint, but from a business standpoint about what could possibly go wrong. And then from a prevention standpoint, once you understand what that business logic is supposed to be, or what the objectives of the website are, then you can start looking at shifting left, right? You can put some of those checks into your code scanning if you think you can catch it there. You can do automated testing either during the build process or during the deploy, or right before the deploy process, and adding some runtime checks in place to make sure that you're actually doing that dynamic scanning and checking for that logic on a regular basis.
Great. Lamont, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. And I love how Marnie jumped to the threat analysis. I think this is very key when you're talking about this subject. And one piece of it is that, it's something that we've been taught as CISOs to do over time. Maybe when we were engineers and analysts before we were CISOs, it was more along the lines of threat modeling. And it's really a skill and a discipline, I'll say, that we sometimes take for granted, especially in this paradigm shift that we're in, whether you're operating hybrid situations or whether you're operating full cloud. But going back to understanding what the business's purpose is, what the desired outcomes are for this website, this digital space that you've created, and then also overlaying that with where maybe some of the weak points, where do we need to add components that will give us visibility, and then what's a known bad, what shouldn't happen, what shouldn't have access to other data components or other systems in this whole transaction flow. And I think the challenge is, you talk about this in the purest form, sounds very easy, sounds, non-complex, but today, we've integrated APIs, we've integrated service brokers and things like that into our architecture. Makes the transactions move really, really quick, but also it increased our threat landscape and the attack surface. So we need systems that are also provide us that increased visibility to API connections, that visibility into microservices and service to service connections, service to machine connections, We just need to understand not only the business logic for outcomes, but we need to understand the data flow and information flow within those systems and where there may be potential weaknesses or blind spots.
So
I
Lamont, sticking
really
with,
like, oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, Mani.
I was going to say, I really like that you brought up the what's not supposed to happen, because it's really important to understand the what is supposed to happen. But if you can key in on those things that are not supposed to happen, that helps from a detection standpoint as well. Now you know actually know what to look for, and it takes a lot less time to tune when you're looking, when you know exactly what you're supposed to be looking for that's not supposed to happen, as opposed to trying to look for an anomaly among all of the things that are supposed to happen.
So Marty, just given the space we're in right now with pretty much everything going e-commerce way, and again, Wayfair is obviously one of the biggest names in retail today and for some time to come, is you mentioned the CISO needing to understand the business and keep up with what's going on over there, but the business itself is changing so fast, faster than it's ever changed before. So how does a CISO not become a point of friction while the business is trying to evolve and still trying to understand, for people who may not understand security at all, which is probably most organizations, is to continue to be that close enough, but yet not be that point of friction?
I have a really simple answer. You ask what the friction points are and what they're experiencing, and then you work with those business partners to figure out how do we reduce that friction. When you've built those relationships and then you actually ask the question, tell me where you're having friction and let's see what we can do about it, and then you deliver on that, that really reinforces the trust. And they'll come to you as they're making those business changes to say, hey, we're planning on doing this. What could we do to make this more secure? Or how can we work together on this? And you'll get a lot better partnership if you just simply ask the question and then deliver on something that's going to help them.
Lamont, I know Netskope is a big name, obviously, in cloud security, but one of the things you mentioned, which kind of stuck in my head, is just the API security and the ability to understand, for instance, I'm a developer coming in, there's this new API, I'm going to start using it, right? Or I go to GitHub and I download something else. So automation is key to this, right? You can't humanly keep up with what else is going on. So talk a little bit about the evolution that you have seen with your customers, especially when they've gone to the cloud and suddenly it's like, hey, it's this big green field, I can do anything, and yet you have to keep up.
Yeah, so it's the movement very, very quickly. Sometimes we call it the Wild Wild West. But no, in all seriousness, companies are moving to the cloud to innovate, right? And that innovation allows you to be more flexible, dynamic, and scale the organization very, very quickly. And from a CISO's perspective, I think we also need to apply those same concepts to our security programs. Marnie hit on something that I think that we all should focus on, and I talk to our customers and my peer group about doing that, and that's talking to the business in terms that they understand. You know, if we understand the business, we understand the security stack that we have today. We can talk to them about where there may be potential points of friction, but more importantly, we can talk about how we can remove that friction, providing they give us something back. And that may be something in the form of a requirement that we give to the organization to say the security team needs to consume these attributes, and then we can remove some of these other components. The security team needs to be able to test and understand the positive and the negative use cases. And then we can remove some of those components. And then let's talk about the data aspects of it. You know, if you can help me to understand, is this data that the business deems important? And where does it become important in this transaction flow? That's where I can put my protections in front of and try to help the business move very, very quickly. Because ultimately, I think as security professionals, it would be great to turn the conversation to, oh, you want to do X? Well, we're already at Z. We're waiting on you. That's the great conversation. We say, we're waiting on you. We put everything in place. You want to move to the cloud? We can help you scale because we're already here. Our controls are there. And we've already been using them and working them in this business unit over here. So a nice soft reference that also helps build trust and say, hey, they are not the house of no, they are the house of KNOW, which means no.
So one final question, 60-second lightning round, I call this. Marnie, I'll start with you. Is we've talked about relationship and trust, right? So any tips in this predominantly remote-only world for a period of time to come? Is how do you not just build trust, but also continue to expand the sphere of influence in a digital-only universe? Any tips that you can share with the viewers about how you go about doing that?
Yeah, it is challenging, I think, and I don't know about you two, but as we moved into remote, my calendar filled up more instead of getting less, because now people can't just do drive-bys in the office and stop by and chat. It has to be more purposeful. So making those conversations more purposeful, you know, going into a conversation, setting up just a coffee chat, but having a little bit of an agenda, and mostly asking the questions, not saying, here's my agenda, here's my roadmap, asking, tell me what your roadmap is. Tell me what you're planning on doing. I'm really interested to hear what new technologies you're interested in from a supply chain standpoint or from a marketing standpoint, because I really want to learn more about the business. And you'll start to hear things and you'll get a lot more information that will actually help you build your roadmap in a way that meets business objectives and feels to those folks like it's meeting business objectives and not just a security agenda.
Final words, Lamont.
So I would say it's very important to plan in this and have, I'll call it loose, a roadmap of this is where the business wants to go. Again, this is being engaged, as Marnie has said several times. Let's get engaged with the business, but also having a plan of how you're going to modernize yourself to make sure that the business can move with the at least amount of friction. Because when you introduce friction, you usually impact the revenue, you impact the user experience, you impact the relationship with the security organization. And by having a roadmap and a plan of how you're modernizing yourself, that also goes a long way to letting the business know you're a true partner and an enabler in this transition plan that they're going through. And then when you do have those unfortunate situations, it's more of a conversation in how we move forward. So visibility is key as you're doing that to allow some of that flexibility, and then being able to apply the controls very transparently that it doesn't impact the movement of the organization.
Yeah, that is, I love that you brought that up, the transparency piece. If we can abstract the security as much as possible from the business, from the developers, and make their experience smooth, then they come to really appreciate what we're doing as well. And to your point, we are actually modernizing, we're finding new tools that are going to help us help the business. So I like the idea of making sure that there's transparency in that process.
Well, again, thank you for your time, Lamont and Marnie. Great conversation. Looking forward to future discussions as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.